Hey, everybody, welcome back to Wicked Sports Podcast. It has been a minute since we've done an actual regular podcast on this channel. In fact, it's been years, but in the new year, we're doing a soft launch or a soft relaunch, rather, of this channel, and we're going to get the Wicked Sports Podcast back. We're going to be making many more videos, or I guess clips from the Wicked Sports Podcast as video clips on the channel, and we're going to continue to do the power play and at the buzzer segments as well as Miami Minute. Sometimes they'll be part of this podcast proper. Other times they'll still be the broken out segments on the YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's get in to the first episode of Wicked Good Sports Podcast in 2025. And it's been a busy day. Of course, the last day of the regular season happened in the NFL, and that means playoffs are all set. That means some teams that were fighting for playoff spots are eliminated. Others are in the playoffs happily. Really, only the Broncos were fighting for a spot there. But, this does pertain very much to my favorite team, the Miami Dolphins, who had a slim chance to make the playoffs, but had an even greater chance to break my heart. And that's what they did. They broke my heart, as they almost always do. So, the first time on the Wicked Sports Podcast, let's go to a segment we like to call the Miami Minute. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Miami Minute, where we cover my favorite team, the Miami Dolphins. So, this is part of a larger podcast, the Wicked Sports Podcast. You can find anywhere that you search for podcasts, as well as this channel, of course. But this is a specific clip that we're going to put out on the channel where we're talking about the Dolphins and everything that went wrong with them. So, Miami Dolphins, they finished the season 8-9. They missed the playoffs. They lose to the Jets 32-20. And fans are very, very upset about this. And I think that's reasonable. I'm also quite upset that the Dolphins missed the playoffs. It was a season that really had a lot of hope heading into it, a lot of expectations, if you will. 2 straight playoff appearances coming in to this season, 11-win season, a 9-win season, 2 wildcard losses the last 2 years. So it was a lot of, will the Miami Dolphins take the next step in their, maturity as a franchise, in their leadership under Mike McDaniel? And unfortunately, it was torpedoed by Tua, being injured. And as much as we can say, hey, it sucks. If he were healthy, we probably would have won 1, maybe 2 more games. Certainly that Colts game where we blew in 10-point lead to Joe Flacco in the Colts. Or what's Anthony Richardson? It doesn't matter. We lost to the Colts. Not a good team. Also an 8-9 team with the win over the Dolphins here, where, they came back against the Dolphins. So probably win that. I think the Dolphins have a much better chance to win the game against the Tennessee Titans if Tua were playing. But at the end of the day, Tua didn't play. And that's been a recurring theme. He's only had 1 season, last season, where he's played a full season. Every other season, he's missed at least 4 games. And, he's had a litany of injuries, right? So, finger earlier in the career where he missed some games there. Then, of course, we all know the concussions. Those have been horrible, horrifying even. But then he fought back. He was able to stay on the field last year. He was a little bigger, but he came back this year, wanted to be able to run more. He was a little smaller, and he got another concussion, missed some games from that. Then, with the season very much in the balance, at the end of the year, he was unavailable due to a hip injury. And, I really like Tua. I think he's the best quarterback I've seen, and granted, I've only been watching the Dolphins since 2001. So that started with Jay Fielder. Never got to watch Dan Marino and, the good times. I missed out on them. So I've seen a lot of bad quarterbacks play, and Tua is not a bad quarterback. However, as they say, the best ability is availability, and Tua does not have availability. And I know that he said that he wanted to play and the medical staff didn't clear him. And people online heavily criticized him for not playing. Like, how could you do this? If the medical staff isn't going to clear him, he's not going to be allowed to play. It is what it is. I know it sucks. It does very much suck, but it just is what it is. So Tua missed the last few games of the season, and we went 1-1 with a win over the horrible Cleveland Browns, a loss over the New York Jets, who, coming into the game, I think a lot of people thought this team's beatable, even with Tyler Huntley. But Tyler Huntley played very poorly in this game. He had some good moments, but they should have been up 14-0 instead of 6-0 to start this game if Tyler Huntley were on in the way that he was against the Cleveland Browns earlier in the season, the week before. But that wasn't the case. Also, I hear a lot of people saying that when the Dolphins were up 6-0, they were playing hard. MetLife Stadium showed the highlights, showed the score of the Broncos and the Chiefs, and it became clear that the Chiefs were not playing hard in that game. And of course, they lost 38-0, and the Dolphins stopped playing super hard, which leads me to my next point of contention. Tyreek Hill. According to Mike McDaniel, he received word during the game that Tyreek Hill was unavailable for the Dolphins, and it was not a new injury. He pulled himself from the game. That's extremely disappointing, especially when you have players like Calais Campbell, a 38-year-old, probably his last year in the league, playing quite hard when there was really nothing to play for. That's commendable. You have players like Zach Sealer getting sacks when the game's, seemingly a bit out of reach, when the playoffs are certainly out of reach. So you have these players still fighting for the team, and you want all of your players to still be fighting to the very end, especially when you're someone as highly paid as Tyreek Hill is. And, someone who was voted number one player in the NFL last year. And I know Tyreek Hill had a wrist injury, but he was able to go. He was able to catch 9 balls the week before for 100 yards. So, very disappointing. So, of course, as any good journalists do, they follow up with Tyreek Hill in the end of the game locker room, and they ask, hey, what happened there? And eventually, we got this quote from Tyreek Hill. I'm going to play it right now.
I mean, for me, like I said, man, I just got to do what's best for me and my family, dog. If that's here, if that's wherever the case may be, man, I'm finna open that door for myself, dog. As I'm opening the door, like I'm out, bro. So it was great playing here, but at the end of the day, bro, I got to do what's best for for my career and what's best, because I'm too much of a competitor to be. Just
Does that mean
it's out there.
Mean you thinking about leaving here?
If it is, hey, yeah.
So that's, of course, not exactly what you want to see from the number one player in the league, your best player. It's apparent that he is frustrated, 1, with Tua being hurt, 2, with the Dolphins not competing otherwise, and he wants out. He feels that he has nothing to offer this team if this team's not going to be competitive. And I think, as a fan, your first reaction is, fuck you, man. The Dolphins gave you a huge contract. The Dolphins gave you a sweetener at the beginning of this season so that you'd come in still being highly paid. The Dolphins have really bent over backwards for this player who is now seemingly quitting on the team. And you know what? That might be my second reaction too. That's still my reaction. I don't like that the star player, one of the cornerstone players of the Miami Dolphins, is seemingly turning his back on the franchise. And then you look a little further and it's like, okay, if he wants to be traded, how do they even make that work? Who's going to trade for Tyreek Hill coming off a down year with a massive contract? The Dolphins, if they trade him before June 1st, are going to incur, I think, a $28 million cap hit. That's not appealing for the Dolphins, just having dead money, paying a player who doesn't want to be here and is no longer here. So they're going to have to work with the team that way as well. And it's just exceedingly frustrating that Tyreek Hill is not seemingly a team player the very moment, the first time maybe in his entire career, when the going gets tough, he wants to get going. Very disappointing from that perspective. But the disappointment doesn't really end there, because we are met with a, I guess, press release from the owner, Stephen Ross, to the fans, basically saying, hey, I know you're frustrated. I know you want change. Change is not coming. That's right. Stephen Ross says that we are keeping not only Mike McDaniel, which I do kind of agree with. The first down year he's had, he's only one game under 500. There are a lot of issues with the team, but also Chris Grier, who I think kind of caused a lot of these issues by not focusing primarily on the offensive line. The offensive line for the Dolphins is terrible, and sometimes they'll have these great rankings, but it's Tua covering up the deficiencies of the offensive line. So we spent years, pretty much ever since Laramie Tunsil got traded, that like started the whole rebuild in 2019 and kind of has ended here. We've had bad offensive line play all of these years. We never addressed it. There was a famous quote of Chris Grier saying, "You're more worried about the offensive line than we are." All I can say is if we're continuing with Chris Grier as the GM, someone has to convince him that the offensive line needs to be addressed. Until the offensive line is addressed, this franchise is going nowhere. And also, it's probably time to seriously consider a backup quarterback that can challenge Tua, that can come in and not look like he's never played football before, like some of our backup quarterbacks have for the last few years, when they have to fill in for Tua because the offense is so complicated, so complex, so built around this one player. Sam Darnold is not a great quarterback. He's an okay quarterback. He's about to be paid like a great quarterback because he stepped in for the Minnesota Vikings after presumed starter, rookie J.J. McCarthy, got injured, and he led the Vikings to a 14-3 record. Yes, the game last night, not great, but he did it. He was able to go in there, get plugged in, and succeed on his own merits. We need a quarterback who is going to be able to do that because we just can't count on Tua to not be injured. And it sucks. As I said, I really like Tua. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a really good player when he's healthy, but he can't stay healthy. So those are my thoughts. Another very disappointing season for the Miami Dolphins. It's tough being a Miami Dolphins fan, but here we are. Please feel free to leave me comments about how frustrating this season has been for you, because it's been so frustrating for me. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. If you're watching this as a podcast, we'll see you in the next segment. So they call the Monday after the regular season Black Monday for a reason, and that is because coaches get fired on this day. GMs too, but it's mostly the coaches that we focus on. And the first one I want to focus on here is Doug Pederson getting fired from the Jacksonville Jaguars after 3 seasons as the head coach, after putting up a 22-29 record, 9-8 his first year, won the division last week of the season, went to the playoffs, beat the Chargers in a come-from-behind win. Things are looking good. Lost to the Chiefs, but were very much in that game before they lost to the Chiefs. The next year, a lot of expectations for the Jaguars. They played so well the second half of the season, and they were unable to really improve on the season before. In fact, they finished 9-8, once again, second in the AFC South, missed out on a wild card spot. So then you come into this year and you're like, all right, Doug Pederson, not great, not bad the last couple of seasons. Let's prove that you are a good head coach, that you are able to get back to kind of how you were with the Eagles, the seasons that you coached there, and it didn't happen. And of course, this was heavily impacted by Trevor Lawrence getting a horrible concussion against the Texans, where he just never came back for the season. The season was, of course, out of reach, but it doesn't help that you're playing Mac Jones in Trevor Lawrence's place. there. There's a lot of blame to be placed. I think the biggest thing people are saying right now, and obviously as not a Jaguars fan, as someone casually plugged in to the Jaguars, people are saying that Trent Baalke, the GM, is an obstacle to getting new coaches excited about the Jacksonville Jaguars job, and they are unfortunately keeping Trent Baalke. So, again, 22-29 record with Doug Pederson, 1-1 record in the playoffs. A disaster season this year, I'll grant you, but 2 decent seasons the 2 years before. I felt like he got a lot out of Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback, as Trevor Lawrence is someone that I was honestly a bit skeptical about coming into the Doug Pederson tenure. Like, I just didn't know if he had it. And, I think he got him to play at a decent, pace. I think he got him to play well. And there are a lot of dropped potential touchdowns. There were like super cuts of that, where if those were caught, Trevor Lawrence looks even better the last few seasons. But now there's going to have to be a new head coach. Apparently, the job isn't especially coveted amongst head coaching candidates, and they're going to be saddled with Trevor Lawrence, for better or worse, because they gave Trevor Lawrence a massive contract. So, a very unfortunate situation for the Jaguars to be in, and I think, we'll see who they get. I think it's going to have to be a young up-and-comer, but, if Trent Baalke is really so bad, will that even matter? I don't know. So let me know your thoughts if you're a Jaguars fan, especially. This is kind of an unfortunate situation. I think maybe give Doug Pederson one more year, but maybe, as I said, not especially plugged in to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Maybe you disagree if you're a Jaguars fan. Maybe you're saying, Brian, I stumbled upon your channel because I saw the thumbnail. I don't agree. He needed to go. We need to adjust. Let me know your thoughts about all of that in the comments. So again, Black Monday in the NFL, the Monday after the regular season ends, is a Monday where many teams fire their head coach. And for the second year in a row, the New England Patriots have fired their head coach. They fired Bill Belichick last year. They hired Jerod Mayo, who was on the coaching staff and was really spoken of very highly in, the hiring process. There was someone who Robert Kraft had actually promised the job, someone who Robert Kraft was clearly very close to coming into this season. And they said, hey, this is our guy. This is the next head coach of the Patriots. We believe in him. We're not going to do very much to give him a competitive roster going forward. In fact, this roster is going to be quite bad. And it was a really bad situation for Jerod Mayo to start off in, but I think that's excusable if you go into this season and you say, hey, Jerod, yes, it sucks right now. We believe in you. Don't worry about this first year. Try to get the best out of your players. Learn really how to be a head coach, and then we'll go forward together. And they went 4-13, obviously 4th in the AFC East, not what you want. But then they fired Jerod Mayo. And I need to ask, who possibly could have succeeded in this position for the New England Patriots? Bill Belichick didn't succeed last year with a marginally more talented team. There was no expectations, at least from my point of view on the outside looking in, for the Patriots, that this team was going to be any good. But as the season was starting to wind down, we kept hearing that maybe the Patriots are thinking of moving on from Jerod Mayo. Maybe they're going to hire Mike Vrabel. And I think it's unfair. And obviously football isn't fair. Life is not fair. But I think you lose a lot of luster as an owner from the Crafts. One, in handling how everything went down with Bill Belichick last year. But two, in kind of showing that your words don't mean very much. I mean, there's no expectation from us that the Patriots would be good. If there was expectations within the organization that the Patriots would be good, that's crazy. This season, to me, was get Drake Mason playing time, see what you have, and then see what you're going to build on moving forward. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Yes, there were some bad, press conferences where Jerod Mayo seemingly called the Patriots soft, didn't really feel like the Patriots were a contending team, and that's not a good look from the coach. We can chalk it up to growing pains, maybe, but I don't know. If I'm Jerod Mayo, I'm quite unhappy with how everything went down. I'm grateful that I got bought out, I guess, and I'm going to be paid a lot of money to not have to work for this organization anymore. And I can find another job and hopefully build everything back up so that I can eventually become a head coach again in the future, should that be what he wants to do. But yeah, I'd be very frustrated if I was Jerod Mayo here, and extra frustrated if they're just going to hire Mike Vrabel, who had a few good runs with the Tennessee Titans, but is he really proven to be a great head coach? I don't know. I don't necessarily think so. I think that, he's okay. It helped a lot when he had Derrick Henry. Then like Ryan Tannehill was okay as well. But I guess the thing is they want a more established coach. They want to have a more positive culture, and they want to still bring somebody in who has roots within the organization. Obviously, Vrabel's not a Belichick disciple, but he is someone who played for the Patriots in the past. He's in the Patriots Ring of Honor. They did that when he was coaching the Titans. So, yeah, unfortunate time for Jerod Mayo. I would be upset if I were him. If you're a Patriots fan, just let me know. Are you also frustrated with this? Are you excited? Do you think Jerod Mayo was given a raw deal? Do you think Jerod Mayo deserved to be fired? Please let me know in the comments. So that will do it for this first episode back on the Wicked Good Sports podcast. I hope very much that you enjoyed it. Please check out the clips too on the channel and all the various shorts that we do. I'm Brian Marr. This is Wicked Good Sports. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.